The old house settled around Lily, its ancient walls groaning as if they were alive. Floorboards creaked like whispering voices, echoing through the empty rooms. Shadows danced in the corners of her room, cast by the flickering streetlight outside her window, creating eerie shapes that seemed to move on their own. Lily shivered, pulling her sweater tighter around her, trying to ward off the chill that seemed to seep from the very walls. It was her first night alone in the old house, and every little sound sent shivers down her spine, making her feel more isolated than ever. Lily walked over to the antique mirror that leaned against the wall, its ornate frame covered in a fine layer of dust. She ran her fingers over the cool glass, its surface slightly dusty, feeling the history embedded in its smooth surface. As she gazed into her own reflection, she noticed something strange, a subtle shift that made her heart skip a beat. There was a flicker in the glass, a fleeting movement in the depth of her reflection like a shadow passing behind her. She blinked, her heart starting to pound. Had she imagined it? Or was there something more to the old house than she had realized? Lily stared, frozen in place, her mind struggling to make sense of what her eyes were seeing. There, in the depths of the old mirror, was a face. It wasn't her own. This face was pale and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to burn with an unnatural light. Terror, cold and sharp, pierced through her. Lily stumbled back, a gasp escaping her lips. The face in the mirror flickered, confirming it wasn't a figment of her imagination. The air grew heavy, the temperature plummeting as a bone-chilling cold seeped into the room. Lily could feel it clinging to her, wrapping around her like an icy shroud. A presence made itself known behind her. A cold breath caressed the back of her neck, sending a wave of goosebumps across her skin. Lily didn't dare turn around. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was not alone. Her heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic rhythm against the silence of the house. Fear, raw and consuming, threatened to overwhelm her. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the coldness receded. Lily dared to open her eyes. She was met with her own reflection in the mirror, her face pale and terrified. The ghostly figure was gone. The oppressive weight that had filled the room lifted, leaving behind an echoing silence. Lily whirled around, searching the room with wide, frantic eyes. The room was empty. Lily ran to the door, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the latch. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, chasing away the shadows and the terror of the night before. The house, bathed in the gentle morning light, seemed almost peaceful, but the tranquility was deceptive. Lily, however, couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had settled deep within her. The unease gnawed at her, refusing to be ignored. The events of the previous night played over and over in her mind, each replay more chilling than the last. The whispers, the shadows, the inexplicable cold, everything felt like a puzzle she needed to solve. Determined to find a logical explanation, Lily began researching the history of the old house. She believed that understanding its past might help her make sense of the present. She spent hours in the local library, poring over old documents and newspaper clippings, searching for any mention of hauntings or unexplained occurrences. The library, with its musty smell and quiet corners, became her refuge. She talked to the town librarian, Mrs. Hathaway, who listened patiently to Lily's story. Mrs. Hathaway had seen many curious souls over the years, but Lily's desperation was palpable. When Lily was finished, Mrs. Hathaway simply smiled and said, "Some houses, my dear, hold on to their secrets a little tighter than others." Her words, though kind, offered little comfort. Lily left the library with more questions than answers. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on her, but she was more determined than ever to uncover the truth. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that night began to fade, replaced by the routine of her new life. The bustling city streets, the endless calendar pages flipping, all seemed to blur together, creating a sense of normalcy that was both comforting and deceptive. Yet Lily couldn't bring herself to go near the antique mirror again. Every time she passed by it, a shiver ran down her spine, and she would quickly avert her gaze, pretending it wasn't there. It stood in the corner of her room, draped in an old sheet, its ornate frame hidden from view. The once beautiful mirror now seemed like a dark presence, a silent reminder of that eerie night. One night, lying awake in bed, her mind replaying the events of that night, Lily made a decision. She couldn't keep living in fear, letting the memory of that ghostly face haunt her every thought. She would not let fear control her. With a newfound determination, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. She got out of bed and walked over to the shrouded mirror. Each step felt like a challenge, but she knew she had to face it. Taking a deep breath, Lily ripped the sheet away, bracing herself for the chilling sight of the ghostly face. Her hands trembled, but she held firm. But the mirror reflected only her own image, her eyes wide with apprehension. She stared at herself, searching for any sign of the supernatural. But something was different. Her reflection seemed clearer, sharper. It was as if the mirror had been cleaned, revealing a more vivid image. And in her eyes, she saw it, a flicker of something ancient and unknowable. It was a glint, a spark that hinted at secrets long buried, waiting to be uncovered.